So now we're going to talk about, now that we know a little bit more about essential questions and what they are and how to write them, we're going to talk about how to implement them into your classroom. So I have this video here that gives a lot of helpful tips about connecting learning targets and essential questions and why they're so important and ways to add them into our classroom. I'm going to just go ahead and skip over it, but I do refer to it throughout this slide and presentation, and it's the one that I was talking about at the very beginning. So one very important thing that I can give to you and tell you about when it comes to implementing these questions into your classroom is wait time. Your wait time is an extremely important, essential part of adding this because wait time is going to be your key to getting the most out of your students. So that's why I say that is the most important part of adding quality questions into your classroom. And it's going to be basically the bulk of what we go over for implementing them, because implementing them is pretty easy as far as, you create the question and then you add it into the content or whatever, make time for it. But how to get the most out of your students, that's what is going to we're going to cover when we talk about wait time. So wait time is pretty self-explanatory. It's the time you're going to wait. More than just after asking the question. We're going to go over that in a minute. But after asking the question, the teacher should wait at least 3 seconds before responding. Honestly, wait longer. 3 seconds, like the very minimum, maybe if you're asking more of a simple question. But definitely for an essential question, you want to wait longer because you want to allow every single student a chance to respond, or at least think of a response in their head so they can be a part of that discussion. If a child is in a group and you ask a question and immediately another student is able to answer that question and then this student has their response, okay, these students that are able to process that very quickly are going to be the ones taking a key part in this discussion, where your student that may have taken a little bit longer to answer that first part is going to probably miss out because they're going to be a little bit more intimidated to put their voice out there because they haven't even been able to gather their thoughts from the very first question that was asked. So that is one reason that it's really, really important to wait at least 3 seconds, definitely longer if you're asking an essential question. So for traditional questioning, as in, I'm asking, I just would like one student's response and so forth, this is kind of how you would want that to play out. You're going to ask the question, that's our teacher question, and then you're going to pause, you're going to wait that amount of time, and then you're going to call on a student and pause. So how do we do that? Because most of our students are trained to know, like when we call on them, they respond, right? So what I suggest doing is either showing your students, this is the way that I work, or maybe some students will catch on, but point to the student you're going to call on, and then instead of calling their name for them to start responding, just point to them, wait a little bit, have your pause there, and then say their name, and then they can respond when you say their name. So you're kind of giving them a heads up, like, hey, I'm pointing on you, Billy, but you're not saying it, and so you just point at them, and Billy, excuse me, and then you're going to let them respond. And then another really, really important part is it says student responds, and then you're going to pause after they say that. Why? If you have students that are not really good at trying their hardest, maybe they're just kind of giving you like half-hearted answer, half thought out answer, they're really not wanting to share a lot of their thoughts, you waiting after they give their answer is going to pull a lot more out of them. You're going to get a lot more engagement and interaction when you have that simple, just short pause right there, waiting until you add whatever you're going to say. So that is something that I think is really, really important, especially if you want more engagement and interactions out of your students. So the next situation is more of like a if you are cooperating, like small groups and stuff like that, if you're kind of wanting that situation or scenario played out. And what you're going to do there is you're going to ask the question, and then you are going to stop. And in both of those, you ask the question and stop, because it's really important that you're allowing all of your students to think before an answer is given, because in a video that will be coming up after this slide, it shows a good example about how when you ask a question, you'll have 20, 35 students in your room. Well, all of their brains process things differently and at a different pace. And to get the most out of your students, if you ask a question and then you immediately let another student answer, or you give the answer, or whatever it may be, you cut off one of the slower processing brains, because instead of thinking it out, maybe like working the equation, you could say, out in their head, they're stopped right there, and then they have to decide, well, they don't decide anything, I'm sorry. When that question is answered, their thinking process stops, and the brain is just given the information. Instead of being able to actually retain that information, their brain just shuts off because they've just heard the answer instead of really being able to think it all the way through. So that's why it's really important to pause right after you ask a question as well, so that you give a chance for every student to think it out and retain that information that you're trying to reinforce. So, so you're going to pause after you say the question, and then you're going to let everyone think. Everyone's going to think about it, and then you're going to allow all the students to respond with their team members. So if you have 4 groups, 4 groups of 4, and then each of that one group of 4 is going to respond to your one team member. So you can just assign whichever team member you want, but and they're going to just talk it out in that way, in kind of a small group way. And then you're going to wait again, and then you're going to share all of the responses with the class through the team members. Then you're going to go back to the teacher question. So that is how you can implement wait times when you're trying to do like small groups and more collaborative type work. So here's the video I was telling you about that really gives a really good visual of what happens to our students in the brain when we don't allow time for wait times. So now let's talk about what teachers tend to do that we probably need to evaluate and make sure we're fixing. So we are asking most of the questions in our classroom. We usually guilty of not allowing the students to do the learning and taking charge over that, because we're the ones asking the questions, probing it. And I'm not saying don't ask questions. Obviously, essential questions, the main part is asking a question, but you don't always have to be the one adding on top of it. You let those children do that. What we also do sometimes is we don't wait long enough after asking a question. That goes back to the wait time. We've got to take the time, be just a few seconds more patient, and you will get a lot better response out of your students. We also are talking as soon as students answer the question. So, when Billy answers with 2 + 2 = 4, I'm just like, yeah, that's right. I know I'm very guilty of like discussing things with students, or doing like just anything where they're kind of responding, and I'm so guilty of my facial expressions or head nodding if they're right or wrong right away. I'm just like, yeah, keep going. I'm kind of just like agging them on, like, yeah, you're on the right track, keep going. Or I'm like, oh no, kind of backtrack. And although that, I guess depending on the situation, may be okay, but I really think it's better for us to keep that like neutral face. That way we are allowing them to decide I'm on the right track or I'm not. So instead of telling them, we can let them continue to think it out and see, do they decide, oh wait, no, this isn't the right way of thinking it, or okay, I'm on the right track, I'm going to keep it going. And also, like I said earlier, you're going to get more of a response out of your students if they're not answering to their full capability because they're maybe like being lazy, or maybe they're kind of nervous to talk. You waiting to respond, you're not giving them that out of, oh, well, here you go, I'm talking. So they feel like, okay, good, I don't have to talk anymore. You're kind of like waiting, and they're like maybe feeling like they need to fill that silence some. So you're going to get a better response out of them there. So at the bottom I have, when teachers don't allow enough wait time, it can interfere with other students' abilities to retain or reinforce new learning. That goes back to that video I was telling you about that discusses and gives us that visual of what wait time does to our students and what their processing kind of looks like. And in this picture here, you have the right here where my clicker is. That would be a student that's already said an answer. That's a student that really hasn't really even understood the question right away. And then here's a student who's starting that thinking process on that question. And in this picture, you can see that students are trying to recall the information while another student has already answered the question. So when that student right here that's already answered it, this process that was, 1/4 of the way finished, it gets cut off right there because the answer's been said. So they're not going to get to finish thinking that out and processing that information. So that is why wait time is really important. So what we should do when we ask essential questions, we should let students ask more questions in the classroom as a whole, and let them ask things during our discussions about our essential questions, and just let them take charge of their learning. And so that means, even if you're afraid you may not know the answer or something like that, that's okay. Learn together, grow together as a whole class, including you as a teacher. We should also wait and allow students time to think. It's so important. Don't rush the learning. Allow other students to answer questions, make comments, and lead the discussion. When I think about that, I think about how I learn best. And the way that I learn best is to teach other people. And by that I mean, when I'm studying for a test or something like that, if I really know that information and I can share it with someone maybe that's a little confused, I am like learning that information, like it is locked into my brain when I do stuff like that. And when you allow your students to answer questions of other students and things like that, you are allowing them to make that connection too. And you're helping the student that has the question, because maybe the student is able to explain that skill or whatever on a way that you couldn't as a teacher, because maybe your mindset, is in adult teacher land, and a kid can bring it down to a kid-friendly level and explain it to that student. So it's a win-win in that situation. The student that's teaching is making better connections in their mind, and the teacher that is, not the teacher, and the student that is asking the question is able to learn something in a new way. So here I have a video where you can see wait time actually fully put into action in a classroom setting. So if you may be confused about how I was explaining it, you could watch this video and that would help you out there. So now for another activity I would do if we were in person instead of online would be an act it out. So we've talked about implementing essential questions, what essential questions are, but here's where we would discuss some of the issues we have when we have essential questions in our class. I would provide everyone with just these copies of these pages on here, because I think this is a great resource to have. It gives you the issue and suggestions on how to fix it, and we would do that. Each team or group would have an issue, they would act it out, and then we would guess what the issue was based off of what we've read, and then we would discuss how to fix it. So kind of like overly focused on content, they're teachers fearful of, maybe the they want to over direct is what this says. So things like that, we would act out and then we would discuss how to fix it, and then we would conclude and just discuss what did we learn from this. So I hope you learned a lot.